Should they abolish the Lakewood Freezer? Welcome once again to the Jewish news channel From Imbalanced. An article was written recently by a part-time shadchan in Lakewood bashing the Lakewood Freezer. He had some very harsh words to say about it, and he says that it exacerbates and actually worsens the shidduch crisis. And in a nutshell, his argument is that if there's a guy who's about to go into the Lakewood's man for the first time, and he gets read a girl, and she's not necessarily the richest girl, he would still perhaps be willing to go out with her because he doesn't know all of his options. But then, if he's in the freezer, as time goes on, he compiles a big list of 100 girls, and there are wealthy girls and girls that are maybe more suited to him. He'll choose to go out with them, and that first girl, she's out the window. She's toast. If he had gone out before because he wouldn't have the freezer to deal with, then he would have gone out with that girl, even though she's not as rich. Now, I have several issues with this argument. The first one, fundamentally, is that I don't see how it solves the problem. We have to ask ourselves, why does he have a list of 100 girls? Girls don't have a list of 100 boys. Some girls don't have lists at all. And I want to say my heart goes out to anybody who's suffering through the shidduch crisis, any family that has this struggle. I really, really sympathize, and I can only imagine how it feels, and we certainly want to do everything we can to actually solve the problem. But the problem is that there are more girls than boys. Without getting into the numbers game and the age gap, there are more girls in the dating pool than there are boys. That's the simple reality. And if we don't solve that, if let's say you manipulate this boy to go out with that not-so-rich girl, what would that do? That would just make it that some other girl is stuck. Because bottom line, if you have more girls in the pool than boys, then you're simply not going to be able to marry them all off. So let's target the fundamental problem, the really underlying cause of the shidduch crisis, which is we have to level the playing field. We need to make it that there's an equal number of boys and girls in the dating pool. Number two, we have to ask ourselves, do we really want to manipulate people? Do we really want a boy to go out with a girl who's maybe not best suited to him because he just doesn't know the other options out there? We want to kind of sneak in and say, hey, go out with her, because before you know it, you're going to have a list of 100 girls and you're going to pick somebody else. I'm not talking about a moral or hashkafic perspective. It's got to speak to a rav or a paisik, but just from a very practical standpoint, do we want to manipulate boys into going out with girls to solve the shidduch crisis and not knowing all the options out there? I would want a boy and his family to have the right to choose from all the girls available who is best suited to him. And again, I don't know about marrying rich, poor, but if that's something that you want, then I would think that that's something that you should have the right to choose on your own and not kind of be manipulated into choosing somebody because you didn't know the other options out there. Number three, there's this notion out there, which is that boys' families should kind of sympathize with girls who are struggling, maybe sympathize with poor girls or girls who for whatever reason have trouble getting a shidduch, and that they should make the sacrifice and have their boy go out with those girls because for the greater good, to solve the shidduch crisis. And I think that from a moral standpoint, philosophical standpoint, anything that you want to do to help the cause is incredibly gracious, and I certainly believe, maybe you're obligated to it. You got to speak to a rav, as I said, but I certainly respect and admire it. From a practical standpoint, I think it's very difficult to believe that you can tell families, listen, I think that you should kind of make a sacrifice for the greater good. There's a shidduch crisis here. In other words, if there's a family and their son is set to go out with a girl who they think is great for her, but she gets a lot of shidduchim, a lot of dates, and then they look at and say another girl who's maybe not well suited for him or not what they wanted, and they say, well, you know, but we should feel bad for her. Again, not judging right and wrong, but it's hard to believe from a practical standpoint. Bottom line, this is my kid. And people, for the most part, they don't want to sacrifice their kids. This is their one and only chance to marry this kid off, and they certainly want to choose who's best for the kid. So to say, well, we would choose X, but we're going to choose Y because she has trouble getting dates, even though X is better for our kid, I don't know. It strikes me as being a questionable thing whether people, practically speaking, are going to be willing to do that on a mass scale. And if they don't, then I'm not really sure how you're going to solve the problem that way. However, as I mentioned before, that's not the core of the problem. The core problem is that there are more girls in the dating pool than boys. So let's solve that. Let's target that. Let's level the playing field. And there have been many solutions offered out there, and a lot of work has been done, but there's still more to be done. Have boys date younger, make it more the norm to date the same age girls or older girls. That's really how we solve the problem. And for the most part, once you do that, sure, there'll always be something small. Once you do that, that'll really get to the crux of the matter, and that the other issues will really work themselves out. Thank you once again for being here on the Jewish News Channel. We will see you next time.